The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on
This is
Sunday.
about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Guns up, giddy up, and welcome to Failure to Stop Podcast, the #1 show where police meet society and culture. Today's show is brought to you by GhostBed.com. You have stumbled into the Friday Breakdown, our flagship show, brought to you by your host, Eric Tansey, and the easy, the breezy, the beautiful Drew Breasy.
Drew
Breasy. Listen, Angry Me Productions podcast, Angry Me podcast, sent me a whole box of new Black Rifle coffee with a whole bunch of other Black Rifle coffee stuff. And I'm all jacked up on caffeine today, brother.
It's better than them sending you used Black Rifle coffee. Like,
yeah,
just use coffee.
Well, it's the new stuff, the new bags. And it was really tasty, but Black Rifle, it hits different. It has,
I agree,
more caffeine. So when I take it, it just, today's day one of the new Black Rifle coffee stuff. So body's just getting used to it. I'm feeling a little bit loosey-goosey. Today, we are breaking down the Manny Ellis case. If you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is simply by sharing us with a friend. We are up over 26% at this point from last month. We are growing rapidly, and we couldn't be more excited. Our Patreon is on fire. I can't thank all of you guys enough for joining the Patreon, and I just hope that content is banger for you. That content costs money to make, and that's why we charge money for you to hear it. But we do deliver 5 free shows a week on this channel, so you don't have to be a Patreon member. You can simply just share us with a friend or give us a 5-star rating and review on the iTunes or the Spotify's. Speaking of people who share us, Angry Me podcast, thank you for sharing us. But the bar is open. With Beg and Greg are having their 300th episode this weekend, and I believe myself and Andrea Uplate will be on for a little bit of that podcast. So congratulations to the Bar is Open podcast with Beth and Greg for having their 300th episode. And you guys can follow us over there, but they're always giving Failure Stop shout outs. So we love those guys. Any news before we jump into the Manny Ellis case, Drew?
Speaking of podcasts, I was on Things Police See. If you want to take a listen and follow, it was a pretty good, it was a good conversation. It was nice to be interviewed instead of interviewing. Yes, there is a headline from the Wall Street Journal. BuzzFeed News is shutting down and Vice World News could be next. Then we learn of the following day, Vice Media prepares to file for bankruptcy. I say that this is great news for you and me because we can gobble up all those former BuzzFeed and Vice News people because I know they are big law enforcement supporters.
Yeah, I feel like there's nowhere else for them to go.
Yeah, there really is nowhere else for them to go. So it does seem that there's a lot of backlash from all roads don't lead to Tucker Carlson. I understand that, but when Fox News, when the Murdochs fired Tucker, it opened up a lot of it gave the country a peek behind the curtain of what digital media is like, what news media is like, and what their intentions are. And Tucker is never one to say I'm going to be controlled by corporate media and I'm only going to say what you want me to say. So I think a lot of these news networks are being exposed. I see yesterday, by the way, that Vice President Kamala Harris has now been named the AI czar. She's good. She's going to be tackling the AI problems.
Good. Maybe she'll be able to do that right. She hasn't done anything else right in her entire life.
I hope she just asks ChatGPT to write a speech for about school buses for adults though. You know what I mean? And let it spit it something out and she can read that shit.
By the way, that was a very funny speech that she gave in front of a whole bunch of lobbyist billionaires trying to get more money. And if, for those of you who are in the dark, that speech went something, I'm not going to quote the speech, but it sounded something like, we have now gotten 60% of school buses. Do you guys remember Do you remember riding the school bus as a child? The magic and the whimsical, the anticipation of what the day was going to hold when you got to school. Do you guys remember that? She was looking at a crowd of like 70-year-old billionaires,
Right.
talking to them like they were babies and talking to them as if they ever rode a school bus in their entire
I was
life.
gonna say,
Like when they went to school, they were riding Teslas. Okay.
85, right? Before they were even born, they had George Jetson cars. Like they would fly to school.
Yes. Yes. And I know that Kamala, I'm not going to, this isn't part of today's show. Has nothing to do with politics today, but I did read an article yesterday where she came out and was like saying that like the big problem with the lack of support that she's had is due to like misogyny and racism. Like, no, it's not that you're a woman and that you're a black woman. It's this that you're not very good at your job. And your Senate race was actually deemed by your own party to be one of the worst races in like political history. So
are you at all following the goings on in St. Louis with the prosecutor there?
No.
Okay, well, there's a prosecutor there, and her name is Kim Gardner. I think she gained prominence because I believe, I don't remember for sure, but I think she was the one that charged the two the couple that was standing outside their house with the guns. You remember that?
Right.
With the BLM protesters. Well, apparently she is. She puts ego before anything else, and she's driving prosecutors out of her office like they're fleeing, the Holy Land, basically. And so just more and more stuff started coming out. Well, she had, they're like prominent murder cases. So she had 5 or 7 prosecutors that handled very violent crimes or murders, like high profile cases like that. And that got whittled down to 3 or 2. And then one of those guys didn't show up for a trial. He had a medical excuse. And of course she didn't do anything to put anybody in his place. So the judge was pissed, rightfully so, and said, I'm going to hold her in indirect contempt of court. So they had a trial. Not a trial. They had a hearing whereby that assistant prosecutor had to explain himself. She didn't even bother to show up for it. And so more and more stuff starts coming out. The governor starts looking into it. The attorney general starts looking into it. Come to find out she's going to like nursing school while she's supposed to be working. And there is a clause that says, if you're going to be the attorney for the people, that you have to devote, blah, blah, blah. Well, naturally, she had to resign because of misogyny and racism, because that's why they're targeting her. By the way, if you Google the judge that held her in indirect criminal contempt, I'm not so sure you can call that racism.
Right. Somebody was wanting to know about Kamala Harris's sexual favors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and I won't want to misspeak, but I'm pretty sure that that's a quick Google. You could probably Google your way through that one.
Are you saying we are not Google?
No, but I'm not going to talk about Kamala's sex history because I'm unlearned of such things, and I don't like to just, you know what I mean? That's what's great about our shows. We're not afraid to say I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like I could make up some shit. I could go and Google it on my computer for you right now and then act like I knew the answer to that question. Or I could just be honest and say like, I'm about to Google it in the middle of a show that has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. It has everything to do with the Manny Ellis case. Or I could just simply tell you, I don't know. Or I could be like the White House where I could just say, we're not going to talk about that.
They're the worst.
We're not going to talk about that.
They're the worst. Oh my God. Eric just quit the show.
That's what they do at the White House.
Yeah, they do. They leave. Just make sure you have safe search on if you're at work and you're going to.
That's less fun, Drew. It's so much more fun when you do these kind of searches and then like get called to IA while you were searching Kamala Harris blowjob. And they're like, why were you searching blowjobs on your work computer? And you're like, well, it was Kamala Harris. And I really wanted to know if she blew her way to the top a lot like you did, sir. Oh, yeah. Not today, IA. Motherfuckers. All right, let's jump. That's enough fun. Thank you guys for all joining us in the live chats. We've got a lot of paid members in the live chats today. We couldn't thank you guys enough. Don't forget, that's always an option here on the Failure to Stop podcast channel. Girls like Sarah Kelch, who we've missed on a lot of the shows lately. She is back in the live chats. We were actually talking about midgets. couple of shows ago, and Sarah's name came up, and I'm glad she's here. Maybe she can answer that later on in the show. But Jeff C, Andrea Uplay, Tacticool Dude, all the guys there, Meat Potato, Falconator. Thank you guys so much. All right, let's dive into the Manny Ellis case. Unless you have something else before we do that.
No, I don't. I think.
Would you start?
I think we should. No, that's if you want. But I think that it's important to point out that I can't remember what the reason was, but Eric was not able to do a show one day or something. So we pre-recorded something with Jay Durrell about this case, about the Manuel Ellis case. We even went live, I think, for like 12 seconds before I caught it, or I'm sorry, before Eric caught it. And so then we had to start all over from scratch. We went through the entire case, and this was going to be rebroadcast the following day. Then come to find out, we didn't hit record the second time. So we had this banger of an episode that would be the lost tape, like if we were the Beatles. So if we leave something out, forgive us. We've already been through this case. We don't expect you to remember everything that we said because even we didn't record it. So here we go. We're going to talk about that if you're ready for it. He was Manny Ellis. This is out of Tacoma. Now this came to my attention because I interviewed Rob Hollingsworth for our Patreon page. Rob Hollingsworth was in Las Vegas during the Las Vegas shooter, and then he subsequently was he was a Tacoma officer, and he departed the Tacoma PD in like fireworks finale fashion by doing a viral YouTube video where he laid out this tirade. Then he got on the radio and signed off, forever and ever. And shortly after he left, or actually it may have been while he was there, 3 officers were indicted. And it's kind of weird and ominous how they were actually indicted. Here they are. It's Christopher Burbank. He was indicted for second-degree murder. Matthew Collins, second-degree murder, and Timothy Rankine, first-degree manslaughter. So they're looking at very serious charges. I mean, the trial hasn't taken place yet that I know of. When you try to find an update, generally you don't find a whole lot of information.
The crazy thing about this case, and since we've been doing like real journalism now for like a year, what's a lot like this case is a lot of the real facts are under a paywall. So everything that's not under a paywall are opinion pieces. But like if you want to see like what the toxicology reports are, what the medical examiner really said, all of that is under a paywall. Like, as in you have to pay $2 for a subscription per month to get access. But if this was, like if the facts were that there was no meth and the toxicology report wasn't bad, it would be blasted all over the free interwebs.
Right.
Because it's like makes the cops look good. They put it behind a paywall. And that's something that we've really noticed a lot lately is that, I always said that whenever there's theatrics in the news, they're lying, right? Whenever they have to play with your emotions, they're lying. And you'll see that in this case, but also you can also tell that they're lying when they put the real facts behind a paywall.
I want to read to you part of an article from so it's funny you say that because we have the probable cause affidavit. We can show part of it soon. That's nothing short of a fairy tale. I mean, when you talk about, just as you did, that's my pet peeve as well. If you have to use like all these dramatic sayings and, paint flowery pictures, you would think like a probable cause affidavit would be like a police report where you're just reporting facts, like just report facts. And
right. So a proper probable cause affidavit would sound like Drew left his house according to his wife at 12:30 p.m. According to witnesses on the streets, Drew Breasy parked in a gravel lot at 1:30 p.m. At 1:32, he entered the C- studios where he assaulted Eric Tansey. According to Eric Tansey, he was struck in the face by Drew Breasy, and then his camera and tripod were taken out the door. Witnesses from the local hot dog shop noticed Drew running down the street with a tripod and camera at approximately 1:45. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically spelling out a very quick timeline of events. Who are the witnesses, and what is that? It's probably Drew that committed the crime. What makes it that it's probably him? Well, lots of witnesses and the timeline fits. It was probably him. And that's enough for the magistrate to say, boom. It's not that like Drew Breasy was wearing Manscaped cologne and we could smell it as he entered the park. You know what I mean? That's not how a probable cause affidavit's written.
So but it is how a news story is written. So let me this is from the Seattle Times, just a couple paragraphs from here. It says, Ellis, who was black, was walking home from a convenience store the night of March 3rd, 2020, when he was stopped by police. He died after being hit with a taser, choked, masked with a nylon hood, and hogtied while repeatedly saying he couldn't breathe. Matthew Collins and Christopher Burbank, who are white, are charged with second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter in Ellis's death. Timothy Rankine, who is Asian American, is also charged with first-degree murder and manslaughter, first-degree manslaughter, and all of them have pled not guilty. This is it makes me sick to my stomach. It really does. Like, this is the only time that it matters is when a black person dies in custody. If a white person died in custody, there would not be an issue. If it was an
active shooter in Atlanta,
right,
that just happened, and the suspect doesn't fit the narrative, we won't even say the suspect's name if it sounds like it comes from a certain culture. They'll just say a man entered X and shot X people.
And I mean, quite frankly, Eric, I'm tired of this. Like, I am completely tired. I don't care. I'm mature enough, emotionally mature, and I just. I
mean, if you're tired of it, head down to the local Wendy's and throw a Frosty through the window, and then yell and scream. Nothing will happen to you. Nothing will happen to you if you act batshit fucking crazy. No,
I guarantee nothing will happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am tired of like always being labeled a racist. Everything is being based in racism. I'm tired of it.
Did you see the new?
I'm not going to not talk about it anymore. I'm not afraid. I know it's in my heart and I know it's in my soul. So if I'm telling you a story and I'm saying things like, this is bullshit that they're saying this is a white officer because it's a black man, it's bullshit. I'm not saying that because, oh my God, we gotta, I don't care about this stuff anymore. I am calling out that is racism in and of itself. It is so anti-racist, it has become racist, and I'm tired of it.
Did you see the politician? He's a Republican politician, actually, but he came out and said that he's identifying as a black man.
As a black transgender woman.
As a black transgender woman, dude.
Yeah. They don't know what to do. They do not know what the fuck to do with that.
Also, really quick, not that it has anything to do with this, but my wife showed me an amazing TikTok where this guy went around Boston Red Sox Stadium and filmed all the Bud Light kiosks. And they're just like people like standing there with their hands on their face and bored, and then he scans to the lines left or right, and it's like wrapped around, and it's like whatever craft beer is in the stadium, and he just walks around the whole stadium catching a glimpse of every single Bud Light. Like, they are hemorrhaging because of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on. I'm tired of this being racist. I actually found out a stat this week, and I'd like to see if you know the same stat. Now, I fact checked it, and I've had many conversations with some other folks about it, and I'm going to do some Patreon stuff later today about it. But let me ask you this: what do you think the percentage of black people are in America?
I'm going 20%.
Okay, all right. What do you think the percent of Hispanics are in America?
That's probably 30 to 40%.
Okay. All right. It's 13% is the black community, and 17% is the Hispanic community.
Okay. I was way off.
So, I mean, I just, when it puts things into perspective for me a little bit too, that like, wow, there's just not that many, you know what I mean? Like 13%. I just thought that number was more like closer to 40 or 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
And just like I would think that like 50% of people are gay, like according to TV and commercials and everything like that. But like they were doing the stats on like biracial marriages. Like, it's so rare to have a biracial marriage,
Yeah.
but every commercial is a biracial marriage. So who are these people trying to advertise to?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if like 0 point something % of people are biracial marriages, and like, why are we spending millions of dollars trying to capture that 0.02%? Like, wouldn't you?
Well, it's
wouldn't
I
it
don't
be
think
wiser as a marketing agency to go after like the majority?
No, it's not. So that's the virtue signaling part of it, because they're not trying to capture the 0.2%. They've already captured them. They're trying to capture the rest of us to say, hey, this is how tolerant we are, and this is how tolerant you should be. What they don't realize is how insulting that is to somebody like me, who's been that fucking tolerant the whole time. I don't need a fucking Benetton ad or a Pepsi ad to tell me to be a good person. I don't need any of these advertisers. I don't need fucking Bud Light to tell me to follow the golden rule. I'm not going to go out of my way to fucking shame Dylan Mulvaney, but at the same time, I don't want to see that. I don't want any part of it. It's based in sexual orientation, or it's based in sexuality. And I don't go around talking about how many chicks I hammered, or, you know, or like, man, I am so fucking hetero. I really think we need to celebrate my penis one day. Like, I don't do that. I mean, like, so why is it? Well, I just may have started a trend. I think it's trending on Twitter. Drew's penis.
Hashtag smell Drew's wiener.
Right.
Hashtag it smells like vagina.
I went from stealing cameras and tripods to talking about my wiener. But look, I'm just all I'm saying is this: you don't need to tell me to do that. You don't, like, what you're saying is you're just now catching up to the rest of us. And I realize that there are some intolerant people in this world, but let them be intolerant. That's their right. They can be intolerant. And wouldn't it be better for them to be openly intolerant, so you know who they are, as opposed to be closeted intolerant, who tell you to your face that they accept you, but when you get behind closed doors, or when they get behind closed doors, they really don't? Wouldn't it be better to know, like, this kind of stuff? So instead of just sweepingly labeling us all racists, why don't we look at truth? Somebody close to me was in a class recently, and they put up this as an example of how law enforcement is so evil. They put up this clip from a fictional movie from Oprah's network, and I mean, it was just so blatantly stereotypical. It was 3 black people holding Black Lives Matter signs, a man, his wife, and his child, and the officer gets out of the car, and it's stereotypical, you know, white male with a mustache, and he's like, "You got a deed for this property? You on public property?" Like, and everyone accepts this as the truth. So in order to prove the point that cops are racist, this instructor, or whatever he is, had to put forth this fictitious playlet, like little snippet from a stupid movie. You know, have you ever seen the clip about the Karen movie? Like, it's just they're just perpetuating this notion that all cops are evil, all white people are Karens, all white females are Karens, and I'm fucking sick of it. I'm telling you,
we've allowed the crazy people to have a voice.
Yes, we have, and they can have their voice, but we shouldn't be kowtowing to them. And when I'm walking through the Home Depot, I don't look at the black people with contempt, and they don't look at me with contempt. We kind of nod and smile to one another. If he drops his pen, I pick it up.
Do you think every black person that
you know
looks
what I mean?
do you think every black person that looks at you in Home Depot is like, I bet you he's building a like one of those
cross?
hanging platforms? Yeah, or a cross.
Yeah,
Like,
across the bird.
I bet you he's trying to put together a noose today. Fucking white person. No,
But
dude. Like,
this is exactly how ridiculous that's. It should sound that ridiculous.
It should sound that
because
ridiculous.
it is.
It should.
And of the, what did we say, it was 12% or 17%? Of the 17%, I'll say probably only 2 or 3% think that white people are racist.
Well, 17% would be the Hispanics. 12% is the
okay.
So
So
the Hispanic community, which is very like, I feel like the Hispanic community, like, Asians get more love than the Hispanics, and the black people get more love than the Hispanics, in my opinion. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think Mexicans are underappreciated.
Sure.
Although today is Cinco de Mayo, dude. I'm going to appreciate the shit out of them today.
Right. Tomorrow being Seis de Mayo, I think I think they are underappreciated. This is back. I got to be honest. I hated working Cinco de Mayo. It's like one of the worst. Yeah, I fucking hated it.
I mean, it's somebody's getting carved up by a broken Corona bottle for sure.
No, but it may not be. It could be Modelo, but it is one of the worst amateur hour drinking holidays. Like really, what are you really celebrating a Mexican independence, or do you just need an excuse to get shit faced?
Well, that's the same as St. Patrick's Day. What do you mean?
It's the same as St. Patrick's Day. I'm with that.
Dude, if you don't think for 1 second that I'm leaving this podcast today and drinking margaritas and Modelo Negros all fucking day while just devouring an entire bag of Tostitos, chips, and salsa, you're out of your mind, dude.
But this is the Mother's Day argument, Eric. Every day should be Cinco de Mayo. I can eat fucking chips and salsa any day. I get the soft chimichanga with the cheese sauce on it.
Don't do this today on the show. Don't do this on Cinco de Mayo.
I'm not shitting on Cinco de Mayo.
Listen,
every day is
you
Cinco
let
de
me
Mayo
have my
in my
day.
house.
You let the Mexicans have their fucking day, right? Gay people get a whole fucking month.
Oh, that's true.
Mexicans get a day. Let us have our day, dude. I'm Mexican today. Let me have my day. Mi gato es muy blanco. Okay. Yo vivo en la casa roja, puto.
Con chips y salsa.
Yeah.
Right. I get it.
Tacos El Grande.
Right. Okay. I don't know where we've gone or where we're going to go, but
this is what this case does to us. And I think to put it in context, let's just read the probable cause affidavit so I can go ahead and throw up and get that out of my system. Because all of this hate right now, I know coming from Drew, and a lot of you guys in the chats are like, I love this part of Drew. By the way, I think we've hit over like 1,000 comments already. And most of them are about how much they love you in this form. Everybody. But listen, like out of context, this probable cause affidavit will do this to any cop that has half of a brain. This is the worst probable cause affidavit, the most disgusting, racist, just the most unprofessional probable cause affidavit I've ever laid eyes upon. And that is what's generating a lot of the anger in today's show. So I think we should just get that out of the way.
We shall. I'm going to further delay it to drive you insane. This is dedicated to all the cops that made a great probable cause traffic stop, found dope, found a gun, presented their case to the district attorney or to the assistant state attorney, who determined, I don't think we're going to get this one by the jury, so we're not going to file on this case. I appreciate you risking your life and all, but it's only about an 85 to 90% chance we'll get a guilty, so we're not going to file. This is dedicated to you because listen to this fucking fairy tale. The background on this is, and this I'm telling you is a declaration for determination of probable cause. This says, Manny Ellis, known as Manny to his friends and family, began the evening of March 3rd, 2020 at his church. He, quote, he just fell in love with going to church. There's an apostrophe, going to church, said CA, a man who'd been mentoring Ellis and giving him a place to live. Ellis stayed at the church until approximately 9:30, playing the drums with the worship band. He's a great drummer, CA remembered. Ellis and CA returned home together while home, sometime between 10:08 and 10:30, Ellis called his mom. He talked with her by video for about a half hour. His sister remembers overhearing her mom's laughter as she talked with Ellis and hearing the sound of his distinct laugh over the phone. After talking with his mom, Ellis ate some burgers with CA. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. This is what Eric is saying. This is what I'm saying. These are facts. These are facts meant to flower, meant to sway you. If you were actually painting this as a picture, you would not get this in front of a jury because they'd be like, you're swaying the jury. You're doing that intentionally. So it says, a little while later, Ellis went to the 7-Eleven to get a late night snack, as he often did. Quote, he's a nice kid, the clerk remembered. Really respectful kid. He always says hi. Ellis believed to have bought a box of donuts and some water at 11:11 p.m.
Dude, wait, stop. Stop. This is still the probable cause affidavit, right? Like for all of you guys in the cops that like just fucking have ADHD and are scanning your sector. What he's reading to you is not a BuzzFeed or Vice article. This is the probable cause affidavit.
Hey, Eric, here.
And by the way, for all those who say that I'm going to get canceled for all my Cinco de Mayo jokes, I just lit a candle. It's a Mexican candle, and it's the patron saint of immigrants.
It's the
lit it and put it
patron
behind
saint.
me. So,
right, it is the Patreon saint of immigrants.
do you have the patron saint of immigrants candle at your household? Fucking racist. I do.
No, I don't light mine to the Sesamayo. Listen, I am showing you this probable cause affidavit. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It is flowery.
But that is bonkers. Like,
bullshit.
he went and got a donut. When I tell you, like,
donuts.
I have preached on this show from day one. You can go back to several episodes, and I will always prove to you. So I'm right. Don't even try to argue it. That every time that there are theatrics or emotions put into what somebody is saying, they are lying. And in this probable cause affidavit is 100% that. Like, I've never read such a terrible probable cause affidavit. I mean, he was going to church, the witnesses said. And
he was in the worship
went
band.
to go get a donut, and he was a drummer in the band. Like, what does that have to do with any of the things that happen? Like, how about, it appeared that he was high on methamphetamines and that he was trying to get into other cars in a stoplight, which drew the attention of the officers, and the officers went out to the intersection to see why this guy was trying to open people's car doors as they're sitting at red lights. And then he began to beat on the officers' doors, and the officers opened the door within. He then assaulted the police officers, and a battle ensued with a man jacked up on methamphetamines. That's your probable cause affidavit right there. Not this whole baloney. He was a worship leader. And by the way, not a good selling point for Christians.
No. Anyway, it says Ellis is believed to have bought a box of donuts and some water. He wished the clerk a good night on his way out, and then he began his walk home, but Ellis never made it home.
Man.
On his walk back from the 7-Eleven at around 11:21 at the intersection of 96 and Ainsworth, he came upon a police car. Sitting in that car were Christopher Burbank and Matthew Collins. So they go on to describe Burbank and Collins, talking about how they both served in the Army. First of all three of these guys that were indicted, by the way, were Army veterans. One of them was 215 pounds, standing nearly 6 feet tall. And Burbank weighs an estimated 160 pounds and is also 6 feet tall. They talked about their time on, which is normal. I could see that being part of it. But they also talk about he's trained in jiu-jitsu or some kind of Brazilian jiu-jitsu or something like that. It says it in here somewhere. Grappling martial arts.
Is that the Asian guy?
No. Oh. No, you're going in a different direction there. It's not Chinese New Year either. So it says, how about this? Let's skip forward a little bit, because it really just, listen, read it for yourself. I'm more than happy to read this to you. I think it's a little, pedantic to do so, but you can read it on your own. But there are little things in here like, I'm looking for it as I'm speaking, if that's not evident to you. But they talked about how they called it a chokehold, that this guy put him in a chokehold. It's not officially what happened, but they talked about the chokehold. They talked about how the other guy, the other officer, pulled out his, quote, taser gun and pointed it at Ellis's chest.
That's in the probable cause affidavit?
That's in the probable cause affidavit.
Isn't that unbelievable that anybody would call it a taser gun in the probable cause affidavit? That is insanity.
And pointed it at his chest. So, like, you're not explaining to the civilian population, like,
where
what
else
a taser
do you point
is.
a taser? You pointed at his dick?
And right. And on top of that, they're talking. Everybody is pushing for less lethal options. Blah blah blah. This guy's resisting arrest. But they want to call it a taser gun. So they want to say that he pointed a gun, basically that the officer pointed a gun
at his chest. So, now listen, we all know the science behind a taser, but those darts don't come out in a straight line. They come out more of a vertical V shape. If you want to aim at his lower torso, one of those darts is hitting him in the wiener. You know what I'm saying? And if you go above the chest, one of those darts is hitting him in the teeth or in the throat. You know what I mean? There's nowhere else to aim a taser except for center mass. It's the safest, like your best chance of not causing.
You absolutely do aim for center mass with these. It is instructed in taser training to not aim for the heart. Obviously, you don't want this probe to go directly into the heart. However, I don't know that I can't give you numbers. I don't think that there are any taser deaths attributed to the probe going straight to the heart.
No, there's none at all. There's zero. And they have tased. My taser instructor actually put the thing like on his heart to show us, like, you know, like there's no difference. Like it doesn't matter where the taser dart goes. The same effects happen essentially. What more important is like how spread out those wires are is kind of how brutal it is. But
yes,
it does put stress on the heart because your body flinches its muscles, but it's the same amount of stress as if you were lifting weights for like, you know, like a set of 5, you know what I mean? If you were doing 1 rep, you know, of 5 curls, you know, it's yeah, that puts strain on your heart too. So, you know, but the actual taser itself, like the dart doesn't hit you in the fucking heart. Like,
no,
it doesn't go anywhere near the actual heart. So
no. They paint this picture about, they keep talking about the time that elapsed before emergency medical people were called, and they keep breaking it down by the minute and second and all that. And when you really do the math, it's like maybe 6 or 7 minutes while they're still fighting this guy before they get him to medical help. But it makes it look like it's such a time span. This thing is so unfair. It is boldly.
Well, you know, what was the you showed me a video from the mayor. Do we have that video clip?
Yeah.
Let's just play with the videos. And then listen, guys, I know some of you are out there like, are you guys just going to break this whole fucking thing down for us? We kind of are. We are kind of breaking it down for you. But what really happened that night was some officers these 3 officers or 2 officers were sitting in a parking lot at a gas station, and they noticed a dude trying to get into cars that were coming across red lights. And so they drove to the intersection, and the man attacked their police car, banging on their windows, according to them. Now, listen, after this guy died, these 2 cops were immediately separated. And their reports were done completely separated from themselves. And immediately the investigation that night, within an hour, was already turned over to an adjacent department.
King County.
So there was no bias. No, this was an impartial investigation. There was no conspiracies that could have been done. I mean, they really went out of their way to make sure that all of this went. No guys that got separated that quickly could come up with a story that matched. It just wouldn't happen. The reports would be so far different that you would know they're lying. But it's not like as they're being separated, they're like, yo, tell him he was banging on our window before they did that. Or, hey, tell him that he said this. So when these 2 cops are separated and they write their reports, they're almost the exact same report, which means that they're telling the truth, because it's impossible to just make that shit up. And the chances of them making 2 stories up that are exactly the same would be absolutely zero.
I want to show a video of the incident, but before we do that, I mentioned this the last time we kind of reviewed this that didn't get recorded, but I've authored, I don't know, I'll go maybe 100 use of force reports, and I've been the reviewer or submitter of probably 100, maybe 200 more, because, you know, the more people you have under you, the more people submit them to you. So I was responsible for reviewing these things, and obviously you take them very seriously because you don't want to end up on CNN like this. And I can tell you very honestly, the way to tell if somebody is lying is if their reports match exactly, because that means that they sat together and they did the report, or, you know, maybe something else, maybe something external, like they watched video.
Right, like a typical report would say, Drew would say, like, the man was banging on my car. I then opened the door. I ran around the front of the truck. I noticed Eric had the guy around the waist and was driving him forward and tackling him to the ground. My report might say, the man punched my window. I opened my
6
door.
times.
He said, I'm going to stab you in the chest. And he balled up his fist and held it to, you know, brought it above his waistband. At that time, I tackled him to the ground, right? Like 2 totally different perceptions. Now, if both reports say, I got out of the car and then I tackled him, and the other guy says, yeah, he got out of the car and tackled him, maybe.
If they're an exact lockstep, it's a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean it's untruthful, but it does mean that you probably need to look a little bit further into it. But if there are just like minor inconsistencies throughout, that lends credibility to the whole thing, because nobody's going to remember everything the exact same way
or in the same
Just like-
order. You know, a lot of times
Or the
people
same
remember what people said in a different order, and that's because of stress and trauma. You know, I might have heard, I'm gonna bust you in your fucking teeth, and Drew might have reported that as a guy said, "I'm gonna punch you in the teeth." You know what I mean? Are we lying? Are we lying when we say bust
That's
you
how
in
you
the teeth?
remembered it.
I heard it as I'm going to bust you in the teeth. Drew was running around the car thinking about a million other things, and he was like, "Yeah, the guy said something about punching him in the teeth."
And this is how this, by the way, is how the defense discredits you on the stand, because I'll get up and testify to my supplement, which says, and you won't be in the courtroom at the time, which says exactly what you just said. Yeah, I remember him saying something about punching me in the teeth. Then you'll get in there and you'll say, no, he specifically said he was going to punch out my teeth with my own handgun. And then when you leave the courtroom, the defense attorney is going to say, see, their stories don't even match. But my point is, the fact that they don't match lends to the credibility. Nobody remembers everything the exact same way. There are going to be little nuances, in between. Here's video of the incident.
Hey!
By the way, this was never.
Oh my God! Stop hitting
Yeah, hey,
him!
stop it really fast.
Hitting him! Just arrest him!
It's important to notice that for those of you who are just listening, this person turns on the camera as they're pulling to the intersection. So you can tell that they were not even there close to from the beginning. They have no idea what's going on here. This is literally inner city theatrics that happens in low income neighborhoods everywhere. You won't see this from the well-educated, from the people who have a lot of money. Like, you don't find this in nice neighborhoods. Nobody does this in those kinds of neighborhoods. This happens in trailer parks and deep in the inner cities, because there is a culture of like camaraderie, right? Where they're never going to say that the cops are in the right. They're always going to take the side of the criminal no matter what. Matter of fact, I had a serial raper one time that was loose, and we were trying to get through people's backyards to catch this guy. He just raped a 15-year-old girl. And we knocked on this one door, and the guy told us like this massive fabricated lie to try to get us off of the scent of this person, having no idea that the guy's a raper. He just knew that we were looking for somebody, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you're looking for a black guy?" We're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh yeah, he went over that way, and he went down the road and he got in a red car and he's gone now." And we're like, "Well, we know that's not true, because we've had this intersection locked down for like over an hour. He's in one of these sheds." But the guy's natural instinct, not even having a clue that the guy just raped somebody, is to take the criminal side in the story and not the police officer side. You don't see that in well-educated, higher income neighborhoods. You just don't see it. If there's somebody running through the backyard, they're "Oh no, officer, what's going on? Should I be worried? Should I be afraid? Should I leave? No, ma'am, just go in and lock your door. Oh my gosh. Well, I hope you find them." You know what I mean? Like, it's a totally different attitude. And so this tape, this is part of this deep inner city culture where she's pulling up. She has no idea what's going on. She has no idea, but she's speaking as if she does. Now, remember, this is like midnight. Listen to how she talks, and also pay attention that there is a child in the car,
In the back seat.
and it's 12 o'clock at night.
I'm starting it from the beginning because it's very quick.
Go ahead.
But
I'll be quiet.
All right. No, you don't need to. They're struggling with him over by some garbage cans. You can see the back of the police car. She's yelling.
Stop!
She's now getting out of her car.
Stop hitting him!
She's saying, "Stop hitting him.
Just arrest him!
Just arrest him."
Just arrest him! Oh my God, that looks so scary.
Okay, so it looks scary to her.
But it doesn't really even look that scary.
No, it doesn't. And here's a second video of somebody driving by. By the way, they're listed in the affidavit as a witness because they use their video, but I still submit, if they were so concerned about this guy's life, like they're portraying in this affidavit, why did they drive away?
Yeah, why did they not stop at all? They were just like, dude's about to die at the hands of the cops. Let's just keep driving by. No, if they thought that these cops were out of line, they would have stopped and videoed the whole thing.
Right.
But getting to the club.
Let me get it again. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Okay, so you heard them say, and then I'll play it again. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Behind your back. Let me get it again. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
And you can see the guy's still fighting. The guy's like still trying to move his arms like inward, as in like he's going to try to hunch his, do these like little wrestling techniques that people often do when they're on the ground. They don't want to go to jail. Do we have the audio of the female though? Like the rest of the audio from the female?
I didn't download the whole clip, so I'm sorry.
So right after that audio that you just heard, where she's like, "Oh my God, it's so scary." This other guy speaks up, and she goes, "Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up, bitch! I got kids in the car. Shut the fuck up!" And she just keeps saying it like over and over again until she turns the camera off. So like, this is your like golden star witness that we're, because she's, listen, because I say they're beating the shit out of somebody, doesn't mean that they're beating the shit. I can say like right now that Drew Breasy is Drew. Stop touching me, Drew. Stop, Drew. Get your hands off my leg, Drew. That's my penis. Get it. Just because I'm saying that doesn't mean that that's happening. Drew's in Florida. I'm in North Carolina. So just because she's saying something is scary and something's going on, and they'll testify in court as if she is telling what's going on, the video shows extremely the opposite. Well, what she's saying.
How about this though? So maybe it is scary to her. Like I get what she's saying. Like if you're not used to watching police confrontations, or you're not used to people resisting arrest.
Come on, the sound of her voice and the way she talked in that car, she's seen this a time.
Be that as it may, she may have seen it. She may not have. I'm just saying, it may be scary to her, and that's how she describes it. She yells, "Hey, this is scary." She has a reaction to it. She's trying to get them to quote stop, just arrest him. Well, if he would comply, they would just arrest him. Now, the defense attorney hat that I would wear would say, if they were trying to kill him, why would they get him to put his hand behind? Like, why were they so calmly trying to get him to stop resisting and put his hand behind his back? He says over and over, he being Manny Ellis says over and over and over again, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe," which is something similar to what George Floyd was saying. However, this was a month or two before George Floyd. So it never gained the national prominence that the George Floyd case did. And he was yelling it. So he's saying, "I can't breathe, sir. I can't breathe."
How many people do you arrest that say "I can't breathe"?
Just about every single one.
I mean, almost every single person I've ever arrested. I mean, even like people with DUIs, right? It's unfortunate for them that they just got shit faced.
Can't breathe. Yeah.
Hey, can you roll down the window? I can't breathe. Okay. Yeah. I mean, can they really not breathe?
I'm willing to make a trade, because everybody claims that we're playing up to the cameras and we're playing up to the body cams by the cops saying, "Stop resisting, because that is essentially what we're trying to do. Alert the public to the fact that the person we're trying to take into custody is resisting. And we're saying, look, it's basically a way of warning the public. We're not fighting and beating this guy. The guy is resisting. So we'll stop saying that if you stop saying, "I can't breathe." Because what you're saying is you're basically saying the same thing. You're doing that for the camera.
We also do the stop. We do the stop resisting because in court they'll ask you, "Did you ever give him a command to stop resisting?" So like I think cops now just
that's a good point.
Yeah, motherfucker. I asked him 1,000 times.
Probably 30 times. Yeah.
Now Bosco says he's on the fence about the George Floyd thing. Listen, I've said from the beginning, I think the George Floyd thing was gross negligence. I did think that Derek Chauvin should go to jail. I said that before he was sentenced. I said he should go to jail. I said the day of his sentencing, before we found out his sentence, that in my opinion, he should get 5 to 7 years. That was my opinion that's based on other people who have been charged with the same crime, with the same criminal background. They've all gotten between 7 years and at the most with like even worse negligence than Derek Chauvin, in my opinion, got 11 years. They gave Derek Chauvin 22 years. And I think that's excessive. I don't think that's fair. But at the end of the day, I will say that Derek Chauvin was wrong in his actions at 18 years. He fucked up that day. I don't think he was racist, and I don't think he intended to do it. But it doesn't matter. He did it, and it was grossly negligent. And so here we are now, but this is not George Floyd, guys. This is not a George Floyd case. They didn't sit on him until he died.
Well, no, that is okay. So that does come into play. That's how Rankine was indicted, because he put his knee in his back. The guy was suffering some type of excited delirium, and he didn't.
But let's face it. If Derek Chauvin would have put his knee on his back, there wouldn't have been the charges on Derek Chauvin. The reason why the Derek Chauvin thing stuck was because his knee was on his face.
Okay, I differ slightly in that. We covered this a little bit on Comm Center last night, and if you haven't watched last night's Comm Center, people in the internet world, please do yourself a favor and watch it. We had a guest dispatcher on as well, and she did phenomenal. Carly, she even had her dog at one point speaking English. So please go and watch that. But what I was saying last night is kind of along these racial tones. Everybody made that into a racial incident, that Derek Chauvin was racist and that he killed a black man, and this is what we want to do as police officers and blah, blah, blah. But when you go to trial and you testify to it, nobody says a word about the color of the skin of the offender, nobody, or victim, whatever you want to call them. Nobody says a word about the color of the skin of the officer. It's funny how that suspiciously just kind of dissipates. It gets planted in your mind for the whole buildup for the trial, but when the trial hits. Now, the other thing I want people to think about, and maybe shell out a couple bucks to watch Candace Owens's documentary, because it is very, very enlightening. If you take, I watched part of the Derek Chauvin trial, and I felt while I was watching the trial, none of everything that the defense, meaning Derek Chauvin's defense team, is saying, everything is making sense. None of it is going to resonate. He was guilty before he even sat down at the defense table. And if we're going to stick with this, well, he was a first-time offender. I don't know why we're being so harsh on him. It doesn't apply to Derek Chauvin for some reason. So I'm not being a Derek Chauvin apologist. I am being a criminal justice system apologist, though. And if you want to do things true, and what I'm saying about the Candace Owens documentary is that he had his knee on his back, and no one has ever challenged anything she's ever said in that. No one has ever said, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit, Candace. Plenty of people have challenged what the media has said. Nobody has challenged what Candace Owens has said. Now, I know she's conservative, and I know she leans conservative, and I know people dismiss what she says just because she's conservative, but she presented facts upon facts upon facts. And I don't think Derek Chauvin got a fair trial.
No, I don't think he got a fair trial. Like I said, I think in any of the circumstances, if he would have done 5 to 7 years, 22 years for being a cop. Listen, if you're going to hire me as a cop and you're going to hold me to a higher standard, but you're not going to hold the priest, the teacher, the congressman, the president, the president's son, if you're not going to hold them to a higher standard, then you can't just pick and choose the cop being held to the higher standard. Like all of those people have the same responsibility as a cop do. A pastor has the same amount of faith. He had the same amount of trust in the community. And so when he defiles that trust or he breaks the rules, I think that, it's just as tragic as when a cop does something like this, or a school teacher commits a crime against a child. Like, there's the same amount of respect, and people look up to teachers in the same ways as they do police officers. So if we are going to decide that the police officers, not the city council, not the city mayor, not the city manager, not the chiefs who get DUIs and get those DUIs dismissed. But, if we're going to hold the officer to that higher standard, then you have to pay that officer the same amount as you pay that chief or that city councilman or any of those other people. That's not fair. And that's not a fair trial. That's not justice per se. But, also in this case, we do have methamphetamines as a big part of the issue. And here's another video that shows what was going on that night that kind of disputes this term of him being a church-going drummer boy, choir boy. And listen, I'm a good person. One of my really good friends is a great guy. 99% of the time, he was a great guy. He was even my battle buddy, per se, like my wingman in Afghanistan. I held this dude close to my heart, and he was a sweet, caring Democrat, matter of fact, joined the military because he was against the war and was anti all of our patrols and anti our war, and was a pain in the ass the entire deployment. Just an absolute pain in the ass. Wanted to thwart everything that we want to do, mainly because he was scared to do most of it. He murdered somebody 4 years ago in his home, and he's now serving a life sentence. The most unlikely person to ever murder somebody. But I think there were some drugs and some alcohol that contributed to all that. And that's sad. But he's not I can't portray him as a good, loving, honest man. He fucking murdered somebody. He's a murderer. Fucking murdered somebody. Sorry. Don't murder people. Do you know what I mean?
It is one of the commandments. So I get where you're coming from. I definitely get that. I mean, but there are, and listen, we have to be honest here in the interest of full disclosure. they're basing the manslaughter charge on the fact that he didn't let up, not necessarily that he had his knee on his neck, but that he didn't let up, and they were trained in excited delirium. They should have known, to let him up. But they also included it. So, there's obviously questions to be answered. This did not go perfectly. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. I just don't think that this rises to the level of murder. Just because a person dies in custody does not mean that it's the officer's fault. And here's a prime example of why I think that.
Ruled his death a homicide. King 5 News obtained the full autopsy report, which also says he had a fatal amount of methamphetamine in his system. The medical examiner report says he died from a lack of oxygen from physical restraint, positioning, and the placement of a spit mask over his face, but added, quote, "It is unlikely that this death would have occurred due to physical restraint alone, without the contributing conditions. An argument could be made that the extremely high methamphetamine concentration should be considered the primary factor."
Okay, so we're talking about the primary factor. Like, I don't, this is what I'm saying. Like, but when you read this probable cause affidavit, they actually address that. They say that, that you shouldn't take any of that into account. Like, for some reason that's not valid information because it doesn't fit into the law. Like, it doesn't fit into what they want. It says Pierce County medical examiner examined the body. He performed an autopsy. He determined that the cause of death was hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen due to physical restraint. That's not what we just read, but or maybe anyway, I think they're cherry picking out of that document. It may be what we just read. In particular, he concluded that the manner was in which Ellis was restrained by officers in the application of the spit hood prevented Ellis from breathing properly and caused respiratory arrest and death. He determined Ellis's death to be a homicide. The sentence is structured so that, paint the picture, and then right underneath a separate fact that looks like it's part of the first fact. Dr. Clark noted that the manner in which Mr. Ellis was hogtied and pressed face down on the ground would inhibit regular breathing. He also observed the inside cloth portion of the spit hood was coated with blood and mucus, inhibiting Ellis's ability to breathe. To which I say, well, obviously, if he was able to expel blood and mucus, perhaps he okay. So at any rate,
the federal term for it, by the way, which this is really funny, right? Why would they not choose to use the federal mandated term, the scientific term, the term that's been in Obama's pillars of policing and how we do uses of force and how things are applied? Why wouldn't they call it by the name that it's given, which is called rip hobbled? Not hog
hobbled. Yeah, it's hobble-tied, right? Yeah, rip. Yeah, okay, got it.
You know what I mean? Like, why are we choosing to change the terminology that the federal government has put on that type of use of force and have deemed it as a necessary use of force? Like, the rip hobble is a thing that can be used to minimize somebody's danger to themselves. I.e., if you're going to use your feet and kick me, that could lead to you losing some teeth when I punch you in the mouth. So therefore, I'm going to buckle your legs with a hobble so that you can't do that, so that you can't kick the walls and, fracture your leg. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to put a spit hit on you so that you don't spit in my face. And then I knock your teeth out like chiclets with my baton. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's for your benefit, buddy.
There's also
you hog a bloody loogie on me and I'm playing pool with your teeth.
There's also medical evidence, medical journals, peer-reviewed studies that say that the spit hood has no effect on your respiratory system. So I can see where they're saying in concert with everything else, like sitting on his back and the being against the ground and all this other bit, and then the spit hood just like slowing the breathing
a mask. Down. Those little COVID masks are more constricting than a fucking spit hood.
Yes. You're right. Listen to this. Dr. Clark has also opined that although blood collected from Ellis at autopsy showed the presence of methamphetamine, Ellis's death was not likely caused by methamphetamine intoxication. As Dr. Clark has explained, medical personnel arriving on the scene observed bradycardia, which is a slow heart rate, and conditions consistent with pulseless electrical activity, neither of which is known to be caused by methamphetamine. Dr. Clark has also noted that Ellis repeatedly stated while restrained that he could not breathe. According to Dr. Clark, this is empirical evidence that Ellis was experiencing respiratory distress caused by the condition of his restraint. If you've got to spend your time, like if I'm a supervisor reading this affidavit, and not that this is an attorney general writing it, if you've got to spend your time selling me on the opposite, if you got to spend your time selling me on the facts that an expert said, but we don't think that that's possible.
It's just because you want an injustice.
It's because you have to. It's because it's not to take away the uncertainty. The uncertainty is built right into it. And again, I understand that this is probable cause. This is you can't use a number on it, but this is more likely than not have committed this crime. It was enough to indict these guys for murder. They're going on trial for this. And it's a shame that we're
sad.
Using this document. Yeah,
what killed Manny Ellis that night were the choices that he made. He chose to at some point do meth. I don't care how good of a person he was up until that point. I mean, that's sad, but like at the end of the day, dude, he chose to do meth. And I'm pretty sure that's not his first time. You know what I mean? It was his birthday. You don't just go like, I'm sure that the previous birthday, he might have ran a little bump, a little toot. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to turn it up a little more for this birthday. He pushing those limits, man. He didn't just go like straight to like, I want to turn it up for my birthday. Like, for me, like it's a slippery slope. Like turn it up for my birthday, started out with a little alcohol. Now I'm 40 years old and I've turned it up to blue chews. You know what I'm saying? Next it's going to be meth. I don't know. But the point is that Manny Ellis made a lot of bad decisions that night. And that's what led to his death. And these cops did everything that they were trained and that they knew how to do. And it's unfortunate that Manny Ellis didn't have the heart to, to finish what he started. And I'm not trying to be funny there. You know what I mean? You got a bad heart. Don't jump in the UFC ring and put massive strains. If you got a bad heart, don't go fucking try to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Your heart's probably not going to take it. If your heart's
need
shitty,
to make better decisions. Yeah.
If you got heart problems, don't do meth. And then fight cops.
If you're going to do a bunch of coke, I wouldn't suggest going on a roller coaster.
Right? You got lung cancer in your family that runs rampant through your family. Let's not do a lot of tobacco and smoking a lot of cigarettes because obviously you're prone to that kind of things. But I'll tell you this though, if you have problems sleeping, I got something. I got an answer that'll clear it up. It is 100% leads to you not dying at the hands of the police, and that's sleeping on a ghost bed. Right now, ghost bed. If you go to ghostbed.com/Wolfpack right now, Mother's Day special, 50% off on all of the bundles. So if you want to bundle it up, listen, if you're a peasant, if you're an EMS worker, you can't afford even with that 50% off. Mother's Day is coming up. Get mama and get mommy a ghost bed pillow. The ghost bed pillow literally changed my life. I can travel. I travel a lot, especially with my kids. Traveling this weekend, be staying in a hotel. Obviously, I can't take my ghost bed mattress with me. But what I can take with me are my cooling sheets, and I can take, even more importantly, my ghost bed pillow. That pillow alone is a lifesaver, and everybody can afford it. And Ghost Bed is a company that supports law enforcement. They have been with us since day one. They offer 0% down, 0% financing, and that's even if you have Lazaro Lopez credits. By the way, a lot of Lazaro Lopez shit coming out on the Patreon. So Ghost Bed love first responders. They love veterans. And you're going to be a better first responder with a good night's sleep. If you're having mental problems, mental health issues, mental wellness, you know what I mean? You find yourself taking more than 2 mental health days a year. Just try a ghost bed. Just try the ghost bed pillow before you go and spend thousands of dollars on therapies and all this other stuff. Just try getting a good night's sleep. And I'm telling you, you can fill out their survey, Big Bird to Cookie Monster style. And their beds are made in the good old USA. Okay. All right. Well, ghostbed.com/Wolfpack, adjustable base, cooling technology, all the things, the cooling sheets. It's all great. We all love it. That's why I am the way I am, frankly.
Thank you, Eminem. Attorney General Ferguson assembled a multidisciplinary team to assist in reviewing the investigation and making the charging decision. The review team included leaders in the office, assistant attorneys general from the Robert Keppel Criminal Justice and Wing Luke Civil Rights Division, a special assistant attorney general, and 2 retired judges, Judges Frank Cuthbertson and Ronald Cox. So when you get civil rights attorneys involved, I know which way it's going to lean. I listen, I am all about this accountability. I'm fine with it when you start indicting cops just because you think you have to, and that's your mechanism for accountability. Let's talk about accountability for a second. Cops are accountable. Let's start at the top to the U.S. Constitution, to the laws of the state that they're in, to the SOPs, to the case law that the U.S. Supreme Court, the circuit courts put out, to what the Supreme Court put. They're accountable to their own departments. Any use of force is going to be investigated. Anytime anybody makes a complaint about race-based policing, it will be investigated, because if you don't investigate that and it's discovered you're not going to get any federal funding anywhere at any time. Trust me. And if you don't believe me, go down to your local police department and ask these questions and see if you don't get the same answer. So I guess to wrap this up in a pretty little bow, we'll play what the mayor said in a second here, Eric, but to wrap this up in a pretty little bow, it all started with me ranting about racism and how I'm tired of the racism and pushing the racial agenda within the media and everything. This is what it leads to. This is exactly what it leads to. Unnecessarily indicting cops, and it's creating a vacuum in the profession, and that's not about, well, now cops are being held accountable, so they don't want to be in the profession. No, who's going to want to risk their lives to go out to a bunch of people that don't appreciate you for risking your life for them? And it gets back to a very simple statement I made, or we discussed last night on the show on Comm Center. When you dial 911, there is nobody on the other end of that phone that is going to say, yes, we will respond to you, but we're going to judge our response time based on the color of your skin. No one has ever said that. You got cops that are just running people off the road to come save you. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, and it's not about, okay, well, this is a good opportunity to kill somebody, or this is media perpetuated bullshit.
Well, that's really funny though. It's like when they call cops racist so much, but I worked in an all-black community and a little bit of Hispanics. Whenever we drive 100 miles an hour with the lights and sirens on, trying to get to a shooting victim that is a black gang member, and you probably even in the back of your head think that he probably deserved to get shot because he's a gang member, we still drive at a very life-threatening speed to try to get there. We jump out of our car with no regard to if the gang battle is still going on or not. We run into the house, not like a soldier where we clear our corners. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, I think it's the hardest thing for the military veterans to do when they become a cop is they don't want to just run into a house and save a life. They want to pie the corners, clear the house first. You can't do that as a cop. You got to get in there and get to life saving.
Get to the threat.
And you get to and you don't get to clear corners and all that crap on just simple calls like somebody's bleeding out inside the back room. You got to follow this grieving family through those walls, and you're doing it for somebody of color. You're doing it for a gang member.
You're doing it for anybody. You're doing
if
it
you
for
were racist, you would just get there and then you could, if you were really racist, if you really wanted to be racist, this is real talk right here. If you really wanted to be racist and you really didn't like black people, Mexican people, or Asian people, whatever, and you get those calls, what you would do is stand outside and be like, I'm not going in there until you guys all come out here. Everybody come out here. Everybody sit down. You would drive slow. You would drive like slower than the speed limit to make sure that the guy's dead before you get there. Like, that's what real racist cops would do. You wouldn't rush to get there to save them. You wouldn't, you know what I mean?
The institution wouldn't put the call in the system.
Sure. That was the case.
The cops on the street would never even know about it.
And then like, what are the chances of, so now you're saying that like every cop has to be white or something like that. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? It goes by call number and who's closest to the call. It doesn't go by race. It's not like, oh, Eric's white and he's 30 miles from this call, let's give it to him. No, I mean, if there's a black dude, an Asian dude, a Mexican dude, you know, that's 3 miles from the call, they don't get to determine the race of the officer that goes to the call. It's just whoever's closest to the call gets to go.
It's what disgusts me about it. It's you know, think back to 9/11, the actual terrorist event, 9/11. You know, those officers rushing up the stairs, those firefighters rushing up the stairs to save people. They weren't going up just to save the white people.
No,
they died saving people, human beings. It never ceases to amaze me that we're just going to make everything about race, and everything is racial and racially motivated. And
hey, get ready for it. It's election season, baby. Just get ready for it. Buckle in. This is going to get a lot worse in the next year. Yeah, political season. The Democrats have nothing better to do than to keep playing the race card. I mean, the borders are a disaster. Syria, I mean, the Sudan is a disaster. You got Iran that just captured their second oil tanker. Ukraine is a disaster. Our economy is a disaster. But everything you see on the news is just nothing but race-baited, fueled hate towards conservatives or anything that they deem conservative, which, by the way, most cops are Teamsters. And if anybody, last time I checked, Teamsters is like 100% Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand like where this whole like thin blue line is a Republican thing. Because I mean, honestly, I don't know what it is where you live. Maybe Florida's a little bit different, but up here it's like 50-50.
Yeah, we don't deal in unions pretty much here.
Well, we don't have unions either,
but
I mean, we have legal representation through Teamsters.
Yeah,
but I mean, my department as a whole is like 50% Democrat and 50%. Like you didn't really talk about politics because you don't know in the locker room who's what, you know. The funny thing was, though, is that we were never allowed to be pro-Trump, but all the anti-Trump cops were allowed to be anti-Trump, which was I always thought was pretty crazy.
Sure, it's.
But you know, as far as politics in the police department goes, you know, you can't just say the cops are Republican, conservative, right-wing, racist, because 50% of the police department's not that way.
Just, you know, think about like the Louisville. The two guys, you know, the guy 4 days out of the academy that got shot in the head. You know, that's what we covered on Comp Center last night. I mean, do you think that they were going in just to save specific? It just doesn't work this way. And I understand that there might be the perception that there's over policing in certain areas. Well, they gravitate to where the crime is, and it's very unfortunate that a very small percentage of the people of that community are committing a very large percentage of the crime, but you've got to look out for the high percentage of the people that need to be protected. And it is a very frustrating thing to go out and risk your life day in and day out. You never know if you're going to make it off your next traffic stop. When you got people that literally believe that you are selecting them because of the color of their skin and not based on their behavior or the criminal activity, whether they're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Martian, it doesn't matter. None of that matters, but it's tell that to the media, right? Yeah. And there's due process issues. If you want to, do you want to play this, the mayor's statement?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do that.
In the final moments of his life, Manuel Ellis's family believes he was being respectful to Tacoma Police and should not have been killed. Police said he was trying to open car doors in March, and when they stopped him, he tackled one of the officers and had to be restrained. The medical examiner ruled Ellis's death a homicide due to lack of oxygen due to physical restraint. An autopsy found Ellis had methamphetamine in his system and heart disease. Pierce County detectives were heading up the investigation and were set to present the case to the county prosecutor, but when she learned a Pierce County deputy had been on scene that night, she passed the case onto the state for a separate agency to investigate.
I don't know to what extent, but I think that's enough that in the appearance of fairness and the integrity of independence that that maybe the sheriff's department, that maybe this should be reviewed now by the state, since state review is inevitable.
The whole circumstance has been remarkably difficult for them to move through.
Ellis family attorney James Bible says the family is glad they got what they asked for.
I think that it makes sense anytime we're in a space where there is a death caused by officers that
Okay,
the
stop
prosecutor's
it.
office
Stop right
actually
there.
relies on
Yeah,
a
yeah,
daily
yeah.
basis.
Death caused by the officer. The
Right,
the medical examiner who is from an outside agency that's not attached to your agency said that the reason he died was due to methamphetamines and heart failure. And you guys will not read that paragraph. You just misread the paragraph over and over and over again to make it look like a cop's killed this guy. This guy was killed by methamphetamines and a bad heart. And the fact that he tackled a cop. And in the only video that we see, you can see him kick the cop 2 times while they're just trying to, they're not even throwing haymakers at this dude. I'm telling you right now, they're better than me, because back in my day, when somebody tries to kick at me like that, it's game on, dude. You're getting tased right then and there. I'm just going to back up and say, kick me all day, dude. I'm going to pepper spray this whole area, and I'm going to tase the shit out of you.
I'd concede that the officers present may have been a contributing factor to this thing. Sure. But they're not the cause of death. And you're trying them like they are. And if the shoe were on the other foot, if this were a regular civilian that just put their knee on the back of some police officer who is exhausted after a fight, do you think they would be indicted?
No.
Would they be put on trial for murder? I don't.
But it's just like the whole wording of this is it's such a misjustice. And anybody who talks about no justice, no peace, this is not justice. This is like, these guys didn't commit a fucking crime that night. Keep going.
They were doing a lawful arrest.
Sure.
And it's similar to you have somebody in your jail and you're in charge of the jail and they die. Like, they're in your custody and they're in your care. I get it, but that doesn't mean you're at fault.
This is like me trying to attack Tim Kennedy, and Tim Kennedy like doing like a back suplex on me, and then I'm paralyzed for the rest of my life. Like, I know my back sucks and it's terrible, and I know that I can't fight and win against Tim Kennedy. So if I choose to try to tackle Tim Kennedy and I get paralyzed, I mean, is it Tim Kennedy's fault?
No. It's your back's fault.
It's your back. It's like, yeah, definitely hip.
It actually relies on a daily basis for there to be a recusal and for the state to actually step in.
I absolutely am glad that the state's going to take over and we're going to get a fair and impartial and independent investigation.
And despite the change, Tacoma Mayor Victoria Woodards is not backing down from her statement last week, calling for the officers to be fired and charged.
Isn't it too early to say that the officers should be fired? We haven't seen the whole case yet.
But it's clear based on what I have a coroner's report that says it was homicide.
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Yeah, but every time somebody dies and there's anybody else involved, it's always a homicide. It could be a justified homicide. Doesn't matter. It could be vehicular homicide, not caused by any kind of negligence. It could be just like you had a flat tire and you hit somebody. It's still homicide. So anytime somebody dies and somebody else is involved in the death, it's always a homicide. Doesn't mean that it's like first degree, second degree, third degree homicide. Could be justifiable homicide.
The killing of one person by another is the definition of homicide. I think that's literally the Latin breakdown of the word homicide, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was homo, meaning
well,
gay.
It could be.
And then side, meaning inside of another man.
Outside. Outside of the profession.
I've always called it homicide.
So there is a question on the table. Do y'all think that there'll ever be a day where people will see through the media agenda and push back? And I think that that's what we're seeing. That's kind of why we set this whole thing up by saying, look, Tucker Carlson was fired. Everybody's getting a peek behind the curtain.
We're doing it. Abby's doing it to an extent.
Abby's doing an amazing job, and she's a civilian, because she cares. She's trying
Brandon
to bridge that
Tatum's
gap.
doing it.
Breaking Barriers United are doing it. Like it's happening all over. But when it comes from cops, it's one thing, because everybody's going to discount the cops. When you start breaking up Vice Media and you start breaking up what's the other one, Eric? BuzzFeed. I think that's when they start tumbling. I think that's when we're going to start making progress, because, but by the same token, I say the major networks are still the same. Like did you see 60 Minutes the other night where they did basically a 12-minute puff piece on Ray Epps, how he's now a victim of Tucker Carlson's brutal attacks, verbal attacks, instead of taking ownership for him being an FBI informant, if he is, or they skimmed over so much more and the important stuff. And just like this affidavit, they sold you on
as we've
everything they
already
needed to sell you on.
found out that whoever owns the big ad agencies that sells ads for all these media, that's who you're up against. It's the people. And if you don't think there's somebody else running ad agencies, go ahead and look at Bud Light. Like they took Bud Light. That's just the first time it's backfired. But the ad agency sent them a woke chick that has nothing to do with the demographics of Bud Light, which is country girls, country boys, you know, a little bit white trash, a little bit country, you know what I mean?
Frat guys.
Like frat boys, like their demographic is like very, I don't know, like, I don't know. I guess maybe like the woke would say it's toxic, you know, like beer pong and Post Malone type stuff. You know, it's like their demographic is definitely not like some kind of like, you know, romantical transvestite gay, even kind of like like it would be just as dumb to put like a straight couple together in a nice restaurant, like a Stella Artois commercial where it's like, I'll have a Bud Light. Like that's not your demographic. But these ad agencies want that to be everywhere and for everything, which is why the ad agency wouldn't promote our show just because we're pro-police. The whole ad agency, even if the individual companies were pro-police, the ad agency won't run those ads because they don't like us. And that's crazy to me. And that's why Patreon is winning. That's why our super chats are the way they were. That's why we're not leaving YouTube. I mean, we're going to keep on YouTube, but the reason why we did Patreon, and I'm so, you guys, when our team told me that Patreon would be more successful than YouTube, I thought they were crazy. And our YouTube isn't all that, you know, I think we're up to like 6.7 thousand subscribers on YouTube, but it's a significant amount of money through ads that we get through that. It's not as significant as our audio listenership, but I mean, it's still a good amount of money. So when I thought going over to Patreon, I thought you guys were nuts. I did not realize that our Patreon would overtake our paid YouTube in less than a week or less than 2 weeks, whatever it is. And it's because people are tired of the nonsense. People don't like this whole ad agency being in charge. They don't like that. And so Tucker Carlson had the highest ratings, or second highest ratings, but had the lowest amount of money coming from ad agencies because it's the people who control the ad agencies that control the money, and the money is what controls the content. But now we're taking a turn. People don't give a shit about the money because people like Tucker Carlson were, you know, even if they're not facts, it's what he perceives the facts to be, and it's not like some kind of robot form of content, which is why I think our show is, you know, widely successful.
Yeah, I think we should replace Tucker, basically.
I mean, but I think people are starting to learn, like we're starting to learn, that we don't have to cater to the ad agencies anymore. We can tell the truth, and the truth will set us free, and we'll still make our money. And that's great. There are people out like Ghostbed that will support you through thick and thin. There are people like, you know, Rit Pack or, you know, Outbound Beef Jerky that'll do their best. People like Will Cray and David J, who drop super chats. Sarah Couch. I mean, you know, Sarah Couch doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it at. And I think she super chatted us like $100 one time. Like I fucking felt bad.
Brittany Faulkner,
Bosco, you know, Brittany Faulkner, all these people that pay to be members and super chat. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. But what it says is that people want the truth, or they want their attempt at the truth. They want a realistic attempt at the truth. Not everything that we say is going to be correct. Matter of fact, I did an Epstein piece on Last Call yesterday, and I said he had been dead for 4 hours. It's not. It's 2.5 hours. And I'll go on the record and correct myself. But I correct myself on the show. But I mean, I was attempting. I did a lot of research to be able to deliver you the truth, and I didn't mislead you. I didn't know that I was misleading you. Not like in this affidavit where they know what the truth is. They know that this is bullshit, but they also know that they need to win for the agenda. They need to win for their votes. They need to win because they think that their demographic is 50% of mankind, and it's not. And they're trying to make it 50%. So Sarah Kell says, don't worry, Transy, you don't have to feel bad. I mean, I didn't even show you my muscles. Here you go, Sarah, for that $100. Get you some of that, girl.
My last point is this: like, if you have to cheat to win, what's the point of playing? I mean, you know, I often, before I got into this, you know, part, like I would often engage in social media debates because, you know, I was just going back and forth with people, and especially when it comes to a police matter, it seems that the black community, people from the black community always say the same thing. It gets down to when you start presenting facts, they say, well, you would just never understand it because you're not a black person. And that's an acceptable end to the argument, or that's an acceptable end to the debate. Everybody wants, quote, a conversation, but when you have a conversation, that's how the conversation terminates. Don Lemon did it live on CNN the other night. Like, you would never, he told Vivek, like, you would never understand what you're telling me. I'm a black man. You will never understand what I go through. So that shuts the conversation down. But what it also does is it discounts the other's experiences. So why is it acceptable for you to tell me that I will never understand your position, but it's not acceptable for me to say, well, no, my position is correct and you'll just never understand it because you've never been a cop? And it just like, if you're going to paint with broad strokes and say cops are racist and not see the irony in painting with those same broad strokes, where are we at? What are we doing? Well, I'll tell you where we're at. We're going to get guys indicted, and we're going to get a vacuum in the profession, and it's going to make society less safe. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Listen, what they want from the beginning is they want to put the pressure on cops so that cops flee. And when cops flee, there's going to be chaos. And then when the chaos happens, the government can come in and take over. And guys, this is a one-party system these days. I mean, look at the whole debates. Like, this isn't a democracy anymore. I mean,
No.
the primaries they're not even going to debate for the primaries. Like, we, the people, don't get a chance to hear what other people running against the two main guys have in common. Like, if you don't think that it's rigged from the get-go, like, it's crazy to think that Biden got more votes, that Biden and Trump both got more votes than Obama. I mean, I don't buy it either way. I definitely don't think that Biden got more votes. That's crazy to me. I can get where Trump did, but and that's only just because of what I saw. You know what I'm saying? From what I hear around multiple towns and multiple outlets, and it's bumper stickers and whatnot. But I think that conservatives, the policies that conservatives are making and Democrats that are trying to make, you know, a lot of these things are just to create dissension and chaos. I mean, having people, what was it in Florida when they passed a bill and then they all started doing the Macarena or some bullshit on the floor? Yeah. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, these people are running the state of Florida. These people are running our country. I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats. I think those were Republicans, but like, that's fucking foolish, man. It's embarrassing, and everybody needs to knock it off. And, you know, I'm so gung ho on not going all in on this whole party system, ultra right conservative. I just can't do it yet. I want to be like Brandon Tatum. I love Brandon Tatum. I respect him. I love Candace Owen. I respect her. I wish I could, but I see too many problems with a lot of that stuff too. And I just wish that we could come, you know, somewhere reasonable, like the reasonableness party that's I've always spoken of. It's like, how do we find all these problems and then like try to reasonably fix them instead of, you know, murdering people like the Clintons do.
I think the problem is that those voices are rising. You know, the guy that you had on Patreon, forgive me, I forgot his name, but you know, the Blexit guy, the Candace Owens,
Anthony Thomas.
Right. Okay, so those voices are rising, and they're pragmatic, and they're good human beings, and they're good souls, but they're tamped down immediately. They just keep tamping them down because it doesn't fit. You know, maybe this phrasing is overused, but it doesn't fit the narrative. So,
and it's crazy because like Brandon Tatum says
some
really nice things. Like I agree with 100% of everything that Brandon Tatum says. I really do. I really love Brandon Tatum. The only thing the only thing I'm not on board with, and it's just me personally, is like, I'm not going to wave a banner or a color of a political party because I don't trust either party. But I do completely respect and agree with all the values that Brandon Tatum fights for and holds dear to his heart. Those are the same values that I hold. I'm just not convinced that the Republican Party.
Yeah, we don't need politics.
I think that they're playing to those strings, but I don't think, you know, I think they say that those are their values. Like, and I'm talking about the politicians, not the people, but the politicians. I think they're playing to that field to try to win those folks over to vote for them. But I don't think that I don't think their over end goal is, you know what I'm saying? Like they're preaching about not having abortions, but they're paying for abortions themselves for, chicks that they knocked up while they're cheating on their own wives. So
I just think far too long we've been answering to the government, and it's never should be that way. It's the other way around. The government should be answering to us. We're the ones. It's our country. We just elect people to represent us, and if they're not representing us, then we don't necessarily have the country we think we have.
Last thing, very quickly, there is a podcast out there, much more successful than ours, and it's called Breaking Points, and it's with Crystal and Sagar. And I will say they are very Democrat, but they produce good news, and they really try to find the truth, and it is very unbiased news, and it's trustworthy news, and it's real journalism. And I would love nothing more for me or Drew or I to go on Breaking Points at any time, because I really do feel like they could benefit from some of the discussion. I think they would appreciate it. I think that we could have a good debate. So if you're still following us, and there's 56 of you in the live chats right now, even at the end of the show, I don't know if that's just paid members. It's definitely just like the paid members, like in the group chat. But because you're in the group chat, I would just assume that you're for us. Please go to Breaking Points and leave a review and say that you heard about Breaking Points through Failure to Stop, and leave a review that says you guys should have the guys from Failure to Stop podcast on. I mean, if they saw that 50 times, honest to God, they haven't gotten a new review, because I check the reviews almost daily. It's sad, because they went from very high rate. They both worked for CNN, and they were both political journalists, but like they have the worst podcast rating. They have, I don't know, I think they're up to like 700,000 reviews or something like that, but they've got like a 3.9 star rating, a 3.8 star rating. They got so many like 1-star reviews and 2-star reviews. And it's because anytime that they talk pro-right, their base, the Democrat fan base, goes and gives them bad ratings. If you go and look at all of their 1-star reviews, very rarely is it come from anybody that's Republican. And so when you see that as a podcast team, it's disheartening, and it makes you not want to report real news. It makes you not want to report on Republican news, because it's giving you bad reviews. So they need to be. That is a great example of a podcast that has a very large reach. They are massive. They've been on Joe Rogan a bunch of times. I mean, they're all over the place, but their voice is like a very, very well-educated and journalistic style voice.
Just like Rogan, though, they're very pragmatic. They tell the truth, and I think that's why they keep getting suppressed. Is it Sagar? I don't remember. I know Crystal was with CNBC for a while, I think, but Sagar actually was either a producer or an intern with Tucker Carlson for a long time. Apparently.
Right, and then and then did he not work for CNN as well?
He may have. I don't know.
I can't remember. But I think one of them was like running for political office of some sort. I don't know the whole thing. Actually, I love their show.
The telltale for me is you can't tell which way they lean, right? Yeah, I mean.
They'll tell you they're Democrats.
Okay, fine. I mean, what I'm saying is they're spitting straight facts. They're giving you information.
They report very equally. Now, sometimes you can tell when Crystal starts to slide in her opinion, right? Like politically, she's upset, and that's awesome. Sagar, he's a little bit more difficult to read, but together, the duo of them, literally, I would love to go to dinner with the two of them, not even be on their show, not have a picture with them, not for any clout. I just genuinely respect and love everything that they're doing. Whether I agree with their Uvalde take, I did not agree with it. I thought that they got some facts wrong, but I also know at the same time that if somebody was there to give them those facts, that they would have investigated those facts.
At least they would evaluate it.
And they would have talked about what they found, good or bad. And that's what's cool about them. So if you could go to Breaking Points for us, guys, and drop us a bone. We would love to go on their show. We would love to, at least have a chat with them at some point. And again, not for any kind of a clout, but just because I genuinely respect what Breaking Points is doing. And if you go over there and you leave us forever, that's sad. But just know, like the prodigal son, you're always welcome back. We'll always accept you back into our house. And but if you're going to be a free thinker, you've got to be able to be well-rounded and open-minded and free think. And that's just another place. A lot of my news is I go to them to see what their research was. And again, I still go and do my own research, and sometimes I don't agree, but I can see where they went the extra mile, and they're not just regurgitating what mainstream media said. And I really respect the shit out of that. just like I respect Abby Ellsworth from On Being a Police Officer podcast. Love her podcast. I love her company and love everything that she does for our channel. And I just hope that we do enough for her channel so that we always make it, mutually beneficial for everyone, just because we really, truly appreciate her as a human being. So if you want a really great podcast to be entertained by in your 12-hour shift, go to listen to On Being a Police Officer. She's not a cop, and she interviews cops on being police officers. And you can learn a lot from these other cops if you are a first responder. But if you're a civilian, you can also learn a lot too. And it's not as harsh and as crass as the way I deliver. It's a little bit more professional. So.
Well, that's that.